You know who she is, right?
Doctors and surgeons in the 19th century were under a lot of scrutiny when it came to their practices of dissection and anatomization of corpses. It was seen as unclean by many, especially the Catholic Church. As it states in Genesis 3:19, "By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return." Dissection and anatomization was seen as unnatural and unchristian. Bodies were initially given to doctor schools for anatomization under the Murder Act of 1752, where on top of being hanged for the crime, they would be sentenced to dissection. This was seen as an additional punishment, for they would no longer be able to go to the afterlife if they were not buried. Additionally, under the Anatomy Act of 1832, surgeons could receive donated or unclaimed bodies to dissect. These surgeons and anatomists needed an ample supply of bodies in order to understand diseases and ailments that were problems within their society. The body supply was not keeping up with demand, and more diseases were arising, which currently had no cure. With legal means of acquiring corpses offering very little to the surgical schools, they were left with no choice but to hire body snatchers to retrieve bodies from graveyards. Even those critiquing these methods state that anatomy by dissection has historically been a key component in medical education and training. Additionally, the mere suggestion that the study of actual human material is anything less than essential for an understanding of how human structure is regarded is bordering on heresy. How can you understand the inner workings of a human and what a healthy body versus an unhealthy body looks like without practicing on actual human bodies? Today, we criticize body snatching because of unethical and immoral issues. However, body exhibits like those in the Boston Museum of Science, which are some of the most sought-after museum exhibits, are commonly made from undonated bodies. In fact, a lot of these bodies come from the Chinese black market of poor, unclaimed Chinese citizens and shipped here to be put on display without the family's permission. Moreover, on top of the education behind it, the bodies and parts that are used for teaching and on display are art. It is clearly connected not only with the history of medicine and of teaching, but also with the history of art, as stated in The Lady and Her Monsters. Additionally, art and medicine worked closely together towards redefining how the body was understood in a variety of ways. Viewing the body bestows a sense of control and even possession to the viewer. However, as we have seen, the theatricality of house museums lent exhibits a certain voice and presence beyond this. It is thought that the ugly and deformed had no place in the high arts. This is the case in many exhibits. For Thomas Mutter, his collection, on top of teaching, was to show what can be done in the medical field and how you should look at everyone. While these bodies may be ugly, says a museum curator, Gretchen Warden, there's a terrifying beauty in the spirits of those forced to endure these affections. Aesthetics refers to sensual perceptions such as pleasure and pain, which are in turn loosely extended to values such as beauty and morality. The museum challenges its visitors to see past their own shock and initial revulsion and instead find the humanity of the people whose remains are on display. Mutter's museum contrasts what was largely thought. Lessing argued that the ugly and deformed have no place in the high arts, and that the civilized did not depict anguish or the grotesque, and beauty is not in the eye of the beholder, but in the nature of the beholden. Beauty was accounted to divine support, ugliness to disfavor. Artists have the power to bring the dead back to life, depicting flayed corpses and anatomated cadavers strutting across the landscape. This leads to écorchés, which are casts made from flayed bodies. They are used for teaching student doctors. However, they reveal mythological insights, which were otherwise available only to the professional anatomist and student of medicine. Medical and archaeological displays of human remains bring us face to face with our morality and the relationship between life and self. Collections can also be used as a strategy for immortalization. How would the Catholic Church feel that God's children are being put on display instead of buried in the ground? They also have a grim history with displaying the dead. In order to be a saint, the body has to be exhumed and examined as part of the canonization process. They have to be incorrupt, meaning there was no preservation used, and the body has to be flexible. However, there are some cases where these saints were buried for a long time before canonization, like Blessed Imelda Lambertini, who died in 1333 but was not exhumed until 1826. That's almost 500 years later. This is a process that is ongoing as well. St. Pio died in 1968 and was exhumed only in 2008. Moreover, there are times that the whole saint's body was not incorrupt, so they took parts of it. St. Anthony of Padua only has a tongue that was not incorrupt, so it was detached from the rest of his body. St. Francis Xavier only has an incorrect arm. These bodies and body parts are put on display in respective churches around the world and can be viewed by anyone who wants to see. In this case, the Catholic Church also believes that collections can be seen as a strategy for immortalization, and that the bodies are a connection between the divine world and this one. As is said of Mutter, he has a kind and Christian heart, who devised the museum in hopes that people would find the humanity in the people and give more respect to them now than when they were alive.